Okay, hello again, and welcome to another session of Great Shouts Marketing and Growth Interviews. I'm Ed Davidson. I'm a fractional head of marketing, and also your host for these sessions. This series of Great Shouts, we're talking about how growth evolves and how businesses evolve when moving from a startup to a scale-up phase of their growth. These are warts and all interviews with leaders and marketing and business owners who have been through the process and have got good insights. And we hope this is really useful for CEOs or founders who are getting to that stage of going from a startup to a scale up. And today we've got Ghilaine Chan. So hi, Ghilaine. Good to see you here. She's got so much experience from kind of early stage of operations and field engineering at Microsoft, then over 20 years experience from scaling distributed and remote international teams. And she particularly enjoys working with cross-functional teams and technical teams as well. So I'm sure she's got so much insight here. So good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. All good fun.
Good stuff. Okay, so the first question I normally ask here, just to give a little bit of kind of baseline of what we're talking about, is how do you define when a startup moves into becoming a scale-up?
So for me, I think it's really when you've got customers. I think that's the important thing. So you've got product market fit, you are selling something, and you kind of understand what you're selling. And then you just need to turn it into an engine or turn it and make it more. So you're focused on your market, you know who they are. You're not necessarily moving into adjacent markets yet. You're still kind of going in the sort of getting started, but you're wanting to hire more people and share the job or jobs across a multiple of people. So going from one person doing the job probably to multiple people doing a job.
Makes sense. I love the kind of theory of, yeah, turning it into an engine. So getting that kind of engine working. When you've kind of seen that growth and you're getting the engine firing, what are the kind of changes to KPIs that you've seen over that time as you know as your COO positions? Do you see that more certainly KPIs become more important versus others, kind of the beginning and the early stages?
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, I don't like quoting Jeff Bezos, but he kind of does know how to build a business. There's that kind of, you got people around a table can share a pizza kind of size. The communication happens, people know what's going on. And then as soon as you kind of get too big, it's probably, I would say 8 people plus, because exponential relationships. You need to start measuring people that perhaps you're doing a job that they're not, and vice versa. So leaders who may have been doing biz dev or marketing or any kind of their particular skill set and now either have multiple people doing it or they're having to delegate. And I think that's the biggest thing from startup to scale up. You have to delegate. And if you're not very good at that or you don't trust people to do a good job, that's where it gets fiery. And that's where the KPIs are, because you're and I'm going to say key performance indicators. They're not targets, they're key performance indicators. So they allow you to look at a dashboard and go, we're heading in the wrong direction before you tank. And so sometimes it's like number of leads going into the top of the funnel. Sometimes it's kind of sales or deals that convert to a certain level. And you kind of know that once you get to a certain level, your averages or your percentages start to play out. So you can start running data and saying, well, when our deals get to, I don't know, qualified, you know that 20% are going to turn to lead. So as a COO, I can start going, okay, I can forecast. So how do we get the number higher in versus then getting that engine, going back to that engine? So I think those are the KPI, the indicators of where you're asking someone else to do a job. How do you recognize they're succeeding? And I think that's the key thing, is like you're measuring someone else doing the job you did, and they're probably going to be better at it than you as well, which is always a bit stressing for some leaders. And then on the flip side of that, because a lot of the work I do down kind of marketing, I'm customer success and product, and the marketing then has to be reflected in the customer success or customer service side of things. So how many tickets or how many returns are we getting, those kind of data points as well, because obviously you've then got whatever product we're building is failing here. So it doesn't matter how many things we feed in here, they're all coming out. So retention, renewal, you know, those kind of things, also indicators that we're doing a good job.
Yeah, and it's really interesting from your perspective to be able to see kind of from a COO perspective, the downstream elements that are going to potentially be in stress as you start scaling up the other bits. So if you have more deals coming through, then it's customer success management. If it's customer service, it's the tickets that you're going to be managing and those kind of impacts. How much kind of preparation and planning do you go by based on those kind of leading metrics of things that are going to break down the line? Is it, kind of quarterly planning, or is it does it need to be, quicker than that to be able to see the later impact down the line?
I mean, it's quicker. I would probably say, so data is an interesting one. You can get real-time data and then it's not really meaningful. So I mean, horrible answer, but it depends. So if you're in really quite fast moving growth, and you need either someone to deal with the leads at a marketing stage or someone to deal with the tickets at customer success stage, often you're literally trying to get the revenue in to be able to pay for someone else come in. If you're invested in business, obviously you have a bit more like, oh, now we're ready, let's pull them in. But you're already always at that situation where I sort of pull triggers. So I have ratios in my head of, so essentially, generally, it's a 1 to 50. So if you have one person, they can deal with generally 50 things, whatever that thing is. And it's depending on where you are in the business, that definition is the thing. And then, but you get economies of scale. So once you get to about 3 people, they can all do 1 to 150 things because you've started building processes and tools around that and you've got kind of economies of scale. So I use those ratios, and then when you get even bigger, you're looking at 250, 300 to 1 because your systems are so technically they're so good. So then in those kind of things, I have those ratios, and then I can start seeing. And again, you'll hit a sort of right. I might have to tell the team they're going to be busy for 4 weeks while we hire someone. And hiring is not a small decision, and it is not a quick process unless you are literally entry level and you're training people up. And then again, they're not ramped quickly. So it doesn't matter which way you go. So you have to have those triggers at a set point where people aren't killing themselves too long. They probably will for a bit, but most people I know will run fast and go, yeah, this is fine, we know help is coming, as long as you sort of let them know. I think the biggest challenge is when you just go, oh, we're busy, we're scaling, and then let people just absolutely kill themselves and then go, where's the end to this, and not hiring. So I sort of have these little trigger points where I go, right, the job description goes out now. We may take longer to hire if it stabilizes, but we've started the process, and those timelines are movable feast, really, as most timelines are, as we know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And are there particular of those KPIs that always kind of stay or regimented that you always have a focus on? So it's classic is like a North Star metric. It doesn't matter how much things are going on underneath in terms of the duck and the feet analogy, with all the kind of the crazy stuff's going on and planning down the line, that you're still focused on that North Star, and that doesn't necessarily change because it's tied to the value proposition of the business or the mission of the business. Where do you see that?
Well, I mean, to be honest, the North Star metric is revenue. If you haven't got the money in, like
Somebody said that
it's like simplistic. It's like people go, oh, what your OKRs? Like, just make more money. I mean, really, the how is obviously the complicated part, but the actual thing is we want to make more money. I mean, that's what business is about. We want to make more margin is possibly another one. So you're like, well, where do we cut costs and don't cut our knees off and all the other? But I mean, really, that is the North Star of any business. Otherwise, you're a charity, and even charities kind of. So I think there's that, but I think underneath that, as a COO, my revenue is not, it's cash flow. So like, if I can't pay well, it doesn't matter how much revenue we've got in, if it's all like 6 months down the line or whatever payment terms. I think Harrods have a 5-year payment term or something ridiculous thing. But so you've got the money coming in, but depending on how people are paying. So ultimately, yes, revenue. Secondary is, do we have enough money in the bank to do what we need to do? And, you know, as I work a bit more in small business and invested startups, small businesses live and die by cash flow. So largely that's then
Makes
my
sense.
North Star.
Makes sense. Going on to team, obviously you've mentioned different elements of the team. What where do you see the kind of team growth? Obviously, it depends on the type of business, but moving from a startup to scale up. Say, what's your kind of view on, say, bringing more in-house versus working with agencies or consultants, for example?
So I think the main thing is so you've got a founding team with their skill set. And I think that's really important to understand is they may be the CEO of the business, but if they're technical, they're probably more likely to be a CTO. If they're more, I don't know, speaker, extrovert, then they're more likely to be biz dev. So I think the way I look at it is you look at the team and you look at, and this is with any growth, you look at who you've got and you look at their skill sets and you really critically evaluate the skill sets, what people think they're good at versus what they are actually good at, and get people in the right places. And so then the founder might think he's great at biz dev, but no, he's not. He's really good at product. So maybe shuffle, So I think that's the thing is find the people, get their capability, put them in the right place. And then you see where the gaps are. And some gaps can be filled while you're still growing. And I think it might be contentious, I don't know, but marketing, I would say, is one of those things where agency might work in the sense of you still don't know what your marketing strategy is or what it should be, but you've got a kind of a full stack marketing agency behind you. So you can kind of pick and choose what you need at any given time, which I think gives you the flexibility until you know what you need. I'm a big proponent of things that are customer focused should be in-house to a point. And I mean, I'm fractional. I think the benefit of hiring senior leaders fractionally is really good because you get a lot of the strategic guidance and you don't make mistakes over and over again. I love training people up to do my job, but to expect someone coming out of like 5 years in the industry and going, right, you're a COO, and then going, what? I've just got a job title. And that happens a lot in startup. You give people these senior job titles and go, well, go on, you've got the job title now. And so I think that's where that's where I love to see it. Go in at startup just before they scale, get them going. Their ops people, get them skilled up, and then go, right, I'm out of here. You're good to go. And I think that can work in quite a few, like finance, I think that can work really well in. I think marketing and sales can work really well. And depending on your product, I think it depends where the accountability is. And so if you're kind of getting going on a big sales thing and you need someone's black book, because that's really what sales is the relationships that person comes with, you're probably wanting to hire someone who cares about the business and comes in. But I think a lot of this is flexible as long as someone is accountable, but there is someone in the business who absolutely kind of oversees that and makes sure that the job needs to be done is done. And I think with agency specifically, that can sometimes be put on the agency. You project manage it and then they get blamed. So I think there's the relationships and communication is always and how the teams work together is the important part, I think.
Do you see when you're bringing in externals, you're getting people to the right level, how you also retain the existing talent in the team? They might not necessarily be kind of ready at that stage, but you want to kind of keep them because they've got a lot of kind of understand the business. They're tied to those early stages, but not really ready to step up. Have you kind of seen any processes there that kind of work, or on the flip side, in the horror stories, why it doesn't work?
I think people can be mentored and coached and given that support. So I think you again, it depends on the seniority and strategic stuff, and also the sort of I've worked with quite a few companies who have said, can you come and assess my COO to see whether they're at COO stage and then coach them into position, or allow me to promote them because they are capable. And I think that's the thing is there is underestimating people, but there's also overestimating people and pushing people too quickly, and they get overwhelmed. I've seen plenty of people promoted into a job where they have the belief or the confidence of their job title, and they are not adequately trained or suitably strategic to take the job on. And I think the other challenge that I've seen is a lot of founders, there's a reason they're founding a business, and it's generally because they're not able to manage people, they're not able to be managed, and they are visionary. So if you put them in an employed scenario, they will just piss everyone off. There's like I don't know many founders who've actually been employed properly for that long. Maybe the older, more experienced founders, I haven't worked with them. But there is a sort of there's a personality type that goes to found a business.
Yeah.
And so they struggle managing, leading absolutely fine. You know, great vision. I'm a rubbish visionary. I'm like, give me an idea. I'm like, everything's like, well, that's okay. No one's going to buy that. But if you tell me this is going to happen, I'll be like, right, I'll help you build that. So as long as you give me an idea, I manage people, I get things done, have the conversations. And I think a lot of leaders don't manage the downside of, you're not actually very good at your job. I need you to be better. Performance management, they're very good at telling people what they want to hear. And I've seen a lot of that where people are mediocre and they're sat in their job because they're early. So people, you know, there's that loyalty. But actually you can bring them up. You just go, right, this is what success looks like. This is what you do. Sometimes you get them a mentor or a coach, whatever. I think everyone is absolutely able to do the job they love to do if they're given the right support. And I think the biggest challenge I see is they're not given the right support at the right times in businesses that are exciting and fast moving and why we're in them. But it can burn people out and it can really knock people's confidence, I think, if they don't do well.
Yeah.
Off on a tangent.
No, I think, and just kind of following up on that, have you seen kind of examples where, I suppose, founder CEOs going from the startup to scale up haven't managed teams working together quite right, and then you've seen kind of things breaking and impacts of that? In terms of my world, there's always the classic of marketing and sales and that natural, wonderful tension that goes on, but working together, as opposed to the conflict and things breaking as you start to scale. Have you seen examples of that and how best to manage it?
I think I have seen examples of that, and generally you get a lot of blame. So it's the product, it's the sales team. So you see it where, yeah, people kind of pull in and get stuck in. And I've been involved in a business where weren't even allowed to speak to the technical team. They all had to go through this. I think it was through the CEO when I first got there, which I thought was quite shocking. And so there was this almost brick wall that you don't piss off the engineers. And I've had that in a few businesses. So you have, and my, like, success happens when people are all working together for the same goal. And I think going back to KPIs question or the measurements, it's like a lot of leaders are given their own measurements, like what's your target, what's your target, what's your target, and then you're kind of going, right, how do we align these? And actually the target should be going to the North Star, right, how do we get more money? Right, we do it this way, and then we do it this way. And I think whatever your preferred system of targets and measurements, whatever, but I think largely the way I look at it is, if you have sales and marketing, is sales don't get their commission until the lead is certainly done. And now I extend that to customer success. If we don't retain that customer at the end of the first year or whatever the cycle, then the final commission payment doesn't get through, because the salespeople, I've had that, you know, moon on a stick. We're selling this. You sell what you can sell in front of the customer, and then product and everyone else has to then deliver. And sometimes it is moon on a stick. And so you kind of have to have that thread that runs all the way through, that is, you are all measured or remunerated on success across the whole company. And there's been another situation where we've like, why are we paying commission on sales? Why don't we just pay them the base rate? And that's an interesting, I've had that kind of philosophical thought. What is it about salespeople that have that commission that is they're generally what they expect? And can we do something about that? But that's a talk for another day, maybe. But because I always feel like it's the ringing of the bell and the sign, the signature that gets the salespeople excited, not necessarily the commission off the back of it. I'm sure there's plenty of salespeople who say, I work really hard and I want the commission. But I wonder, because the rest of the business don't get commission and the rest of the business are delivering that sale. And that's always, and as someone who sits in the business is probably the least paid, in the operations customer success, you sort of think, I'm also part of that success. And pulling that away and taking commission away or sharing commission, and I have done that, share commission across the company. So the bonus pot, salespeople get some, and then it goes into a bonus pot for everyone else to share equally. That worked really well for everyone to focus on how we're getting sales and to look at sales as their North Star, not release product, SLA within. They were like, how are we helping the sales team make sales and how are we helping the sales team retain customers? Because you're sharing the joy as well as the pain. So there are ways of getting everyone aligned on the same goals. Again, I think I went off on a tangent.
No, I think it's really interesting kind of to have that view. And I think it's often the case with, people in sales are being driven with associated urgency to be able to get those sales over the line. And that urgency is the sales bill and getting that commission. But yes, if you don't have that alignment and then people just churn off, there's no point in trying or to kind of cracking on to be able to get those sales in. And I think how organizations are aligning there was super interesting. I suppose bringing it back then just to briefly in terms of startup to scale up, when you see those organizations around the remuneration or the incentives in that way, is there a kind of difference? Or is it kind of startups, everyone running together to find that kind of product market fit to get those early sparks of that engine? And then does it change at all when you move to that kind of scale up, let's scale up together?
I think so. I think there's this sort of interesting thing of being one of the early people. And I think you have the ability to build your career in the company and kind of grow with the company, which is an incentive in itself. And I think sometimes you'll get a decent chunk of equity, but when you're doing the job and you're still in startup, 10% of nothing is still nothing. So you sort of still going, well, this could all go to pot. When it starts scaling, I think that equity that you've got and the chance of having part of that pie, I think becomes a much more realistic option. And so I think a lot of people go into startup and go, I'll take a lower salary for a cut, see how it goes. But like for me, my rate is lower because the kind of businesses I work in, because I don't want to be in corporate and those kind of jobs. So you kind of take the excitement and all the other fun stuff and the flexibility and madness, and you may well go in with a lower salary, not always the case. But then in scale up, I think you've got the ability to go, well, that equity was great, I possibly want more, because you can see that actually that becomes valuable. And I think a lot of people also come in because it's less likely to fail. So it's a bit more security. And you've got the situation where you can probably pay more salaries and give more benefits. So you do have a different type of person at a scale up stage, I would say, where they're used to things growing very quickly. So that you've still got the fun and the complexity, but because of that complexity, you need people who know what that looks like. And so they know their market rate and those kind of things. And you sort of start offering things, certainly from engineers, hiring engineers at the moment can be expensive, that kind of stuff. And so I think the type of people you can get is a lot easier, and you're still flexible enough that you can give more benefits or give more time. So, give more holiday rather than pay more. So I always find with scale up, you can be quite flexible with how you position yourself. You may not have the money of the big companies, but you've got the flexibility to offer certain things that other people don't, holidays, more leave, whatever it is, that actually more people want.
Yeah.
Money isn't the be all.
Yeah, yeah. Does the culture change at all, or are you looking to
Oh.
keep the essence of the culture that was there before, but still enable it to scale with, well, scale often with obviously with a far larger team?
It's important to maintain culture, whatever that is. Generally, and again, this might be contentious, is the founders drive the culture, and they can sit there and write whatever they like on a piece of paper and go, "This is a culture." If they don't behave that way, everyone's going to follow them. So I worked for Microsoft for 10 years. To be successful, being a mildly autistic technical person really got you quite far. And then when Steve Ballmer turned up, being a loud extrovert salesperson seems to get you success in the company. It doesn't matter what they pasted on the walls, there was that kind of theme. And I see it very much in small startups. Um, and again, it's like, if you can't get the founders to behave in a way that you want the culture, you have to change the culture, because that's your role model behavior. So, and this is the other thing, is culture is neither good nor bad. So if you go with, I think it's BlackRock, radical candor, almost offensive, make money at will, all of those things. That's their culture. Self-select out, fine. You may not agree with it, don't work there. But their culture is their culture, and they hold tight to it. So you have to make sure that most people enhance or maintain that culture. And so then you have to drive that forward, because you run the risk of getting arseholes in, essentially. And so, oh, we need to make sales. Let's get the wanker in, and he can go and, or she can go and make loads of sales and make everyone miserable as a result. So you've just got to hold that culture, but you may enhance it by bringing different people in. And I think that's the thing, is it's really easy to say, oh, culture is the thing, and then have a team who are all very similar. Oh, the culture, there's an excuse. So you always say, maintain a strong culture, enhance it with diversity and adding other people who don't negate the culture, they build on it. And you have to hold it true. And I think all interview process has to have cultural questions. And you maintain that. You get people that are self-selecting, and that getting people working together, you have a nice theme of, you'll notice this lovely red string of value and actions that cross the whole company. And I do a lot of work on, I'm not very good at creating the culture, but what I am good at is making sure that the team maintain it as you grow. It's also, don't hire this person because they're not cultural fit. So the rest of the team have to be involved in some form in the interviewing process to make sure that cultural fit is up there. It's a shorthand for so many things, and it causes simplicity and rhythm and smoothness, where if you need to disagree, you're at least disagreeing in a similar value base, which makes it a lot easier.
And as long as that culture can adapt to the different needs of the teams in the organization, right? So you probably have a certain type of personality in sales than you would have in engineering, but
Yes.
the overarching
Yeah.
culture can still adapt to that. Then
Yeah.
yeah, and then you can your sweet spots, and as you say, there's a rhythm, and then ideally that's reflected out to customers as it is internally in terms of the team, because you're living and breathing the mission in terms of
That's
what
it.
you're doing.
And
Yeah.
it's your brand. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's your brand. Your
Mm.
brand outside, your culture within,
Mm.
because your customers feel it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, they should be very closely aligned. So yeah.
Yeah. We're kind of running out of time. Try and keep these things to 30 minutes. I'd love to, I suppose, ask you the question, your position here as a COO. Often we're kind of having conversations with marketing people. Where does the kind of COO sit on the C-suite at the moment? Where is the kind of natural tension that kind of happens in different C-suite members? And where's the best position that you've seen in it all working together?
So the best is essentially second in command to the CEO. Generally, so I recommend a book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman. And it talks about visionaries and integrators. So visionaries are like, yay, let's do it. And the integrators get everything done. And if you get that fit right, the visionary just gets on, and every so often it's like, why isn't everything going quickly enough? And the integrator goes, because things take time. They go, oh, okay, and walk off. If you don't get that right, they're constantly at loggerheads. But then the COO can make sure that things happen, and I think then allow the rest of the C-suite to go off and do the thing that they need to do. And it comes back to that delegation and trust. Is I'm a jack of all trades, so I can kind of know how to do a bit of everything, but I'm not an expert. So I can trust enough to say, right, you're a marketer, go and do the marketing. You're a sales, you go and do the sales. I found CEOs can struggle with that delegation. So you get that relationship, the rest of the C-suite know what they're doing, can go off and do it. And you've got the measurements, everything in place to know that that's happening. So that's my ideal. Sometimes that's held by the CFO. In COO, CFO mix. I'm not finance COO. I like Excel, but not that much. And so, yeah, so sometimes it might be those two, but that's where I like to be, is just, right, go and do everything, get it all done. I trust you. And then once you've got that, but as long as trust happens, it probably is less of an important place to be.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, great. Well, look, we'll end here with one last question. What's the one best piece of advice you could recommend to a founder or a CEO of a company that's going through that kind of growing pain from going to a startup into a scale up?
Don't try and build a system or automate things until you know how to do it manually. I see so much happen. They go, classic, get Salesforce in, and then you end up following the default path of Salesforce because you haven't actually gone, this is how we want to do it. So know, whether you know it personally, but know what happens, document it and go, this is how we want it to work. How can we build it this way? But no, because there's a lot of personal touch points that you should never automate. And this is my biggest challenge. Is there's great personalization out there with marketing and everything else, but sometimes they get it horribly wrong. So some points always have to be person to person, and knowing where those are is really important when you're looking to scale, put processes and automations in. So that's my basic advice.
Good tip. Makes sense. Well, look, Ghilaine, thank you so much. Excellent to have a chat. Thanks a lot, everyone, and speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.